This is episode 73. I should change the title on the screen. And as always, I am Mason, and that is actually not Gautam today. So with me today is Ashley Sanders, great friend of mine, great friend of the stream. Ashley, you want to give yourself a little intro today while I get the title correct?
Yes, you get the title correct. Yes, hello, Ashley Sanders here. Been a MLB The Show content creator for the past 2.5 years, now stepping into a role with the live content team at Sony San Diego studio. Very, very soon. I am still in Chicago, but I'm going to leave for San Diego in just a matter of a few days. Just been spending some time with family and friends, being on the podcast, talking about something I'm very passionate about, so I'm very excited for this conversation, and as always, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. So we have a great episode set up for you guys tonight. As always, we're going to do a little bit of This Week in Baseball, but the main topic that we're going to talk about today is women in the history of baseball, and kind of what we're seeing today and the future of where we want to see things.
Mhm.
So with that being said, let's get right into it. So I'm going to start with something that's incredibly selfish. As a Cardinal fan,
Yes.
Albert Pujols. This man continues to amaze. Obviously, with the Cardinals from 2001 to 2011, he was on a fantastic track to be one of the best players in baseball. He continued his run of dominance until about 2015, before his career kind of started to fall off a little bit. Injuries, things like that. Well, now he's back in St. Louis, and he looks like 2011 Albert again. He, in the last... accidentally closed the tab I was trying to look at. It's awkward.
All good.
Does anyone know the hotkey to like bring up the tab you just closed?
Mm-mm.
Like Alt-Shift tab or something?
Gotta do it from memory. Improv time.
Yeah, so in the last 10 games, Albert Pujols has hit about 7 home runs, I believe. Yeah, here we go. So last 11 games, Albert Pujols, 514, 553, 1171 slug with 7 home runs. This is an absolutely unreal tear. This is better than any 10-game stretch, or 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Better than any 12-game stretch in the history of in his entire career. And he's on pace to potentially get 700 home runs. Baseball Reference has been doing an Albert Pujols update every day, and in the last 3 days, he went from 7% chance of reaching 700 to 15 before yesterday's doubleheader. He's back down to 11, but at the beginning of the year, who would have thought that Albert would be potentially hitting 18, 20, 21 home runs this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very exciting. The fact that he's 7 home runs away with about 40 games left. It's going to be close. It's going to be tight, but with 11% chance, there's a chance.
Yeah, so it's going to require a lot of left-handed pitchers in the next 40 games, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible? Yeah. Do I think Oli Marmol's going to give him every shot to do it? Absolutely. So, tinfoil hat theory time. Because he's so close and he's such a well-respected guy, are there going to be any situations where, kind of like Greg Maddux did in his day, he would intentionally give up a home run to a guy? Maddux did it so that people would be looking for that meatball in every at-bat that they faced him before or after that. Obviously, that wouldn't happen with Albert, but are we going to see a pitcher or two kind of just tee one up for him?
Interesting theory.
And would you be mad if they did?
You know, if it's the last game of the year and he's at 699, I say give him one. If he hits it, great. If not, he had his chance. I don't think I would be mad about that, though.
So I'm kind of in the spot where, because of his career, and the
Mhm.
fact that he's played his entire career clean,
Yeah.
unlike the guy he's trying to pass at 697. Um, I kind of think if the situation doesn't blow a game, why not? Like the
Yeah.
Grand Slam the other day, absolutely not the right time to do that. That was unintentional. But I've been thinking about it. Like, who wouldn't want this man to get to 700? Cubs fans? Maybe? I don't know.
I mean, the pitcher, they'll also make history. They gave up the 700th homer,
Exactly.
albeit, they gave it up.
Well, and if I were a pitcher that's never faced him before, I would want to give up
Mhm.
a home run just so that I was the 450th different pitcher that he hit one off of to set a record. Like,
That's true.
every home run he hits now is another record. So
Yes.
everyone go get your footnote in history. Do it. Get this man to 700.
Right? It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Um so that's kind of all I got about Albert. Let's talk
Okay.
about Dustin May.
Mm.
So Dustin May left a game in 20 what was it? Was it 2020 or 2021?
I think it was 2020 or very early 2021.
It was the second inning on May 1st, 2021. Dustin May
Okay.
went or had some pretty obvious discomfort after throwing a
Mhm.
pitch. Ended up getting Tommy John. He is finally back. He came back for his first start on the 20th against the Miami Marlins, in which he threw 5 innings of one hit ball with 2 walks, 9 Ks, and he was looking nasty.
Mhm.
But so I don't know about you. I am incredibly excited to see him come back. I love Dustin May. I kind of
Yeah.
have since he was a prospect, and
Mhm.
this is a team that like the team is amazing, but it's a team that's been hurt the whole year too. So like we've not even seen their full potential. Now we're
Absolutely, which makes them very scary come the playoffs very soon.
yeah, and
Mhm.
unfortunately it's kind of a 1-for-1 swap Walker Bueller for Dustin May, but Dustin
Mhm.
May can touch 100, so
Yes.
that gives it an entirely different look.
Mhm.
So no, I'm really excited to see what he can do here, especially in a stretch run. They've kind of got the division locked up. I don't really think that's the biggest thing they're going for here. That first
Yeah.
round bye, that's what they're going for. So
Oh, and I think they'll get it. I shouldn't say like easy peasy lemon squeezy, but something catastrophic would have to happen for the Dodgers not to secure one of those buy spots. But like the cool thing about Dustin May is because he's so fresh and because he hasn't pitched a whole lot in his major league career, is he has the advantage over most hitters who aren't going to see him until the very first time that they see him, which will most likely be the next month into the playoffs.
yeah, and then the
Mhm.
long flowing red hair is intimidating.
Oh,
So
of course.
they're going to be
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the Dodgers are currently 6 games ahead of the New York Mets for the best record
Mhm.
in the National League, and then after them is actually the Atlanta Braves. I didn't realize the Braves had caught up that much. They're only a game and a half back in the
Yeah, they're
division.
on a tear.
Dang. But yeah, so the Dodgers do have a basically 7.5 game lead on losing a first round bye.
Hmm.
I, I would put money on them getting their first round bye though. I mean a 269 run differential in a
Yeah,
700
right.
winning percentage. Eh,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, but then on the other side of it, Walker Bueller's going out for Tommy John for the second time in his career. So
Yes.
that is a huge blow.
Mhm.
Um,
Hope the recovery goes well because he's good when he's playing, and we need him to keep playing.
Yeah, he's definitely had a little bit of a down year this year compared to
Mhm.
past years.
Yes.
In
And now we kind of know why.
yeah, yeah, in 12 games, 65 innings, he had a 4.02 ERA, a 381
Mhm.
FIP. His Ks per nine is actually the lowest of his career. His
Interesting.
BABIP was up at 312, which is by far
Ooh.
the highest of his career.
Yeah.
So he was definitely struggling, but this kind of makes a lot of sense now. Um, it is a little bit odd seeing a guy get Tommy John second or for the second time. It's not
Mhm.
totally unheard of. It's just a little
Yeah.
odd.
Yes.
So yeah. So hopefully he can recover quickly, be back middle of next year because he is really, really fun to watch.
Mhm.
So
We'll
also on
see.
the surgery news, Fernando Tatis Jr.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard my rant about him last week.
Feel free to refresh the audience.
So Fernando Tatis Jr. was on the fourth game of his rehab assignment. MLB came out and suspended him for 80 games for using Clostebol, an anabolic steroid. He supposedly got it in a ringworm medication from a haircut that went badly, got infected with a fungus, and was using Clostebol to treat that. Doesn't really check out medically all that well. Well, he's since been apologizing profusely in the media and has announced that he's going to get the shoulder surgery that he was supposed to have gotten in 2020 after he hurt his shoulder there. So he's kind of using his suspension here to get healthy. Hopefully, when he comes back, he can get off to a good start and kind of start to gain the public trust and his team's trust again. So,
Absolutely. I mean, it's nice to see him take ownership. Whether you agree or disagree with the actions that he took, it is nice to see him take ownership. And now he's using the suspension to help himself, which will then help the team in the recovery, in the surgery, then the recovery of his shoulder. We've seen a few teammates like Manny Machado, like Joe Musgrove, come out and say, you know what, we have his back. We will welcome him back in. Of course, there's going to be steps that are going to have to be taken to mend the relationship. But Tatis does have something on his side, and that's his age. Because of how young he is, he still has, hopefully, a very long career that he can kind of write his name, or at least kind of put this in the rearview mirror by the time his career is over, where not a lot of people are going to talk about this. Rather, the 10, 15 years he played after this incident.
yeah, exactly. And it's a little bit different of a situation, but I hope that he goes on the David Ortiz train, where David Ortiz never technically tested positive in an official drug test. He was named in the, I can't think of the name of the report, the 2003 report that A-Rod got suspended for. But he never tested positive after that. He went on to have a fantastic career, made the Hall of Fame. He's beloved by pretty much everybody. Tatis still has the ability to do that.
Yes, I would agree.
And I think the big thing out of all of that news about him this week that I kind of noticed was he's not going back to the DR for the offseason this year. He's staying in the U.S. to stay with the training facility in San Diego, or, well, wherever their training facility is. But he's going to do it right this time. And hopefully that means he's not going to crash his motorcycle again. Yes, the Mitchell report. Thank you, Z. But yeah, so hopefully he starts to make some better decisions.
Yeah, he even said he's going to be in the San Diego area, so I would assume that's where a lot of their facilities still are during the off season. So who knows? Maybe I'll bump into him.
He needs to hang out with you because you're a great influence.
Sounds good to me.
All right. When he does, let me know. I'll fly out there. So
sounds good.
All right. Two more quick topics, and then we'll get into the main topic of the night. Adolis Garcia does not get a ton of love in the media. Young center fielder for the Texas Rangers, but he is doing something that has only ever happened one other time in Rangers history. He now has a 2020 season with a 20-game hitting streak. The only other Ranger ever to do that is Ivan Rodriguez. So fantastic group to be a part of there.
Without a doubt. The second Pudge.
The second Pudge.
It's
the only guy that I ever remember is nicknamed Pudge.
Dang it, Mason. That's okay.
But yeah, Adolis, in his 2020 season here, has put up 3 WAR. He's incredibly good. Like, people kind of sleep on him. Like, we knew him last year because as a rookie, he went on an absolute tear, hit 31 home runs, and kind of took the league by storm there. And then this year, he's got no love whatsoever. So it's really nice to see him do something like this. So.
Yeah, he's kind of flown under the radar in terms of national news. So it's nice to finally hear about this, even though we should have already been talking about him before he even reached this 2020 season.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And all this from a guy that was DFA'd by the Cardinals back in 2019 or 2020. Like, that's a fantastic way to basically show your old team that they're missing out.
Oh,
so kudos to him.
Yeah.
All right.
The Rangers are going to be really good offensively for a while. It's just that pitching.
Yeah, especially once Josh Young comes back
Yeah.
and debuts. I think that's going to be a big step forward for this Rangers team.
Hmm.
So,
And Jack Leiter in a few years, if
yeah,
not sooner.
yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. All right, balanced schedule. Released today. We kind of got our
Hmm.
first look at it. Give me your opinion on this balanced schedule.
I love it. I think it's incredible. I don't need to see, as a White Sox fan, the Royals, Guardians, Tigers, Twins 19 different times amongst them. It's nice that number is going to decrease a little bit. I think it was like a total of 72 games every team played against their division rivals, and I believe the number is around 56. So that decrease is nice because we're going to be able to see everyone, coming from an American League standpoint, from the National League. Of course, we'll be alternating ballparks, home and away, year in and year out. And it's exciting to see other stars that typically we don't see. Like, for example, at the end of the 2023 season, the Padres will be ending the season at Chicago. And I don't even remember the last time San Diego was in Chicago. So Chicagoans are going to be able to see Tatis and Snell and Machado and Musgrove and everyone who makes up the Padres, all the young superstars, not to mention Juan Soto, newly acquired. So it's very exciting to be able to get a taste of every single team in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Hmm.
with the new balance schedule, it went from, I believe, 76 to 52 games in the
Okay,
division,
yeah.
I think is what it is. And then I think it was 60 or no, 40 something games that we were playing against interleague, or
Hmm.
20 games against
No.
interleague before. Now
Yes.
it's in like the 40s.
Hmm.
And so we're going to be able to see, um, basically the division races are going to be way different next year.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the NL Central and the AL Central have been historically the weakest divisions in the last like 20 years. It's always the Cardinals and like either the Brewers, the Cubs, or the Reds, but never two of the three.
Hmm.
And then in the NL Central, it's always the Guardians, the White Sox, or the Twins, but
Hmm.
never two of the three.
Yeah.
So and then you see the NL East where like this year the Orioles are what? They're still 4 games above 500, I think.
Do you mean the AL East?
Yeah, did I say NL?
Yeah, all good.
Oh, whoops. The AL East. Baltimore is still 6 games above 500, but
Hmm.
they play. I mean, playing 76 games against the division, like they are 27 and 29 in the division this year, and they're
Honestly,
above
that's
500.
not bad for them. Yeah, exactly.
So, with a balanced schedule, seeing less of their division and more of some of
Hmm.
these other teams, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like a 70-win team right now with the balanced schedule.
No, yeah, without a doubt.
So, it's going to provide a
Mhm.
lot more parity, and I think that's going to be really cool to see. So, you're
Yes,
not going to
without
see
a
all
doubt.
these teams that are getting into the postseason, even though they're worse than teams that miss out.
Exactly.
So,
That's a good way to put it.
yeah. So, any more thoughts on that, or do you want to get to the main topic of the night? Because I know you're excited about that one.
I am very excited, so I'm ready to transition to the main topic when you are.
All right. So, our main topic tonight is women in baseball. So, women have an incredibly storied history in baseball, and not many people know about it.
Hmm.
It goes all the way back to the 1940s. And I kind of felt that with the new A League of Their Own series, that it was maybe time that we start kind of talking about the history of women in baseball on this podcast more.
Hmm.
So I'm actually going to let you lead this segment. So where do you want to start?
Let's start with 1943 in the All American Girls Professional Baseball League.
All right. So yeah, so in 1943, World War II was kind of going on. A lot of your big stars were going over to fight in the war. Stan Musial, Ted Williams, all the guys like that. And so the draw to watch baseball just wasn't really there as much. So I believe it was Mr. Wrigley, right? Yeah. So he decided to start the All American Girls Professional Softball League in 1943, and so it's the same teams that you see in the movie League of Their Own, the series, but it actually started as a softball league. And then
Hmm.
over the next couple years, they adopted more and more baseball rules, and I think by about 1945, it was full on baseball.
Yes.
So, but yeah, so it's a league that never integrated,
Hmm.
but it was entirely women, coached by men, for except for the I don't know, is the Rockford Peaches losing their manager, was that actually a thing that happened, or is that just something that both movie and TV show adopted for storyline?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure for certain because I know those were all like fictionalized retellings. It was like realistic fiction, if you will. A little
Yeah.
bit of nonfiction, a little bit of fiction. So that's actually a very good question.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, I don't think that's going to be an easy find here.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so
Mhm.
I guess so. This was kind of the first time that we saw women in baseball, like in really any capacity. There were a couple of owners of teams. The St. Louis Cardinals were actually owned by oh, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but had a woman owner from 1910 to 1916, I think. And there were a couple other owners who were women, but this is the first time we ever saw in a managerial or a playing
Mhm.
capacity women in baseball. And
Mhm.
they had to go through a ton of BS that nobody deserves to go through. A ton of harassment, a ton
Mhm.
um, of just repression of their personality.
Mhm.
Um, but it was kind of the first time that anyone's ever given or gotten a shot. So
Correct.
I guess from my perspective, it's really cool that that happened when it did, because
Mhm.
that's not something that in the 40s anyone would think was possible. Like it was still kind of that women were homemakers time of US history. And so this
Mhm.
is kind of the first step into the more modern equitable society that we have now. Um, so I guess uh, could you kind of expand, I guess, a little bit more on that for me?
Yes, it was considering the 1940s, it was an incredibly progressive movement in baseball and softball during the time where you these women just didn't come out of left field, pun intended. They literally were scouted to come and try out at Wrigley Stadium at the time. And during it, you would get all these owners like Mr. Wrigley himself that were looking at them and they're like, "You know what? We want women to play baseball. We want this story to keep going and keep growing and to entertain the fans that haven't really been entertained through the Major League Baseball level because all the stars are off fighting in World War II across the seas. And so, because they were scouted and they were looking at all these tryouts and then early practices, they wanted women to still be women because they're playing a quote unquote men's game. So during the days they would be playing their baseball games and either before their day games or right after their day games or a mixture of the both, they had to have etiquette classes on how to be a woman so that they wouldn't lose that feminine touch while playing a quote unquote masculine game. So on top of the verbal harassment that was going on from the stands by the women just playing on the field. They were also then forced and having to uphold this very feminine, 1940s stereotype of white women during the time, which provides a whole nother battle when you just want to be your authentic self and just showcase your talent on the baseball field, but you have to remember to smile and wave to the crowd, wink at the crowd. Have there were exact rules for how to wear your makeup, how to wear your hair. Your hair had to be down and very nice looking, but it didn't want to be, the whole the whole what's the word I'm looking for? The whole spectacle of you, if you will. There was very specific rules. I was reading just the other day on
So you were talking about kind of they had to go through the
yes,
whole spectacle of
yes,
their looks, their how they
yes.
acted,
hmm
but then that's kind of where we lost you there. So
Okay, all good. That's good. Yeah. So they had to be aware of how they looked, how they played on the field, what they wore on the field. They were required to play in skirts, and that provides a whole nother set of challenges in terms of especially sliding on the base paths. Many of these women had to deal with different abrasions and bruises and cuts on their legs just from sliding on the dirt. It's the same reason why baseball players don't wear shorts, besides, of course, the White Sox in the 70s, but that's besides the point. And there was literally a guide to how to take care of your abrasions, of your bruises, because they knew they were going to get them, but it didn't matter because they had to wear the skirts to appease to a male-dominated crowd that also had women in the crowd, and to encourage that white female stereotype of what a housewife looks like, even though she might be playing a male-dominated sport.
Yeah, and I think there was a scene in, I think it was episode 1 of the new League of Their Own series,
Yes.
that it tries to boil all this down into one scene, kind of right at the beginning to throw it in your face.
Hmm.
But um, eh, they had to basically approach Mr. Wrigley and kind of his advisors and just show that they were
Yes.
attractive, essentially.
Hmm.
And in one of the women in that scene didn't put on makeup, and they tried to kick her out of the league, and the other women go and they're like, no, she was putting on our makeup, she didn't have time, we'll go help her. And but it's incredibly powerful, just kind of showing exactly what you're talking about here, like.
Hmm. Yeah, because right before that scene, a woman was cut from the team because she didn't curtsy correctly. So not only did you have to worry about being cut because maybe you just weren't good enough talent wise, which should have been the only focus, but you also had to worry, am I coming off too masculine? Am I not feminine enough? And if you weren't feminine to a certain degree, it was see you later. We will get somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the same time, like, so they had to subject themselves to harassment and
Yeah.
objectification by men just to have this
Hmm.
opportunity. But at the same time, this opportunity was really only given to white or incredibly light-skinned Hispanic women. Like
Yes.
anyone who was of any noticeable color was kind of just blackballed from the league. Um, so that was kind of another bit that um, they didn't really touch on the Hispanic portion as much in the show, but that's
Hmm.
something that as I go back and read, like, basically you had to pass as white in order
Yes.
to get into this league at all. Even though they were pulling in players from Cuba, from Canada, from places outside the U.S.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, there is a big emphasis on passing as white, even in a lot of like disregard to other like Central American nationalities, where it was kind of like okay, although you're not this white stereotype that people, or actually it's people that these men are imagining in these higher up leadership, powerful roles, as long as you don't have a certain level of darkness to your skin color, you are able to play. However, that kind of brings up the conversation of the Negro Leagues and how women were able to play in the Negro Leagues, especially with all women of color, especially women of color that could not pass as being a white woman, were able to find we're able to find the Negro Leagues as a baseball outlet. But of course, there are only so many women in the All American Girls Professional Baseball League, and even less women in the Negro Leagues. However, the women in the Negro Leagues still had a bit of spotlight that they absolutely deserved and earned.
yeah, and that kind of growth into the Negro leagues of women in baseball didn't even happen for another what was it, almost 10 years. Like there was a lot of like all women's professional, well, I don't want to say a lot, there were
Mhm.
all women's professional leagues
Yes.
it, between 1943 and in the 50s, but they weren't really very popular. You didn't get a lot of recognition for it. But then it took until 1953 for the first woman to crack into the Negro Leagues. And that was after the Negro League National League had folded by 5 years.
Hmm.
So we were down
Yeah.
to like, what was it, like 4 teams?
Four
Yeah,
teams.
there were
Yeah.
4 teams left in the
Hmm.
the Negro American League at the time. Um, but then the Indianapolis Clowns, not a fan of the name, but the local Negro League team here in Indianapolis, just north of where I live, um, they actually went out and, in order to draw more fans, signed Tony Stone, who played in a ton of different semi-pro leagues that were all women leagues from the time she was 16 to when she was 32, and signed for Sid Pollock. Um, but she only got to play 50 games out of a
Hmm.
175 game season for the Clowns. Um, and she kind of was just that ticket sales thing that we, spoiler alert, if you've not seen A League of Their Own on Prime, uh, the Max character, I think is kind of based along Tony Stone. I mean, she's a conglomeration of every woman that ended up being turned away from the AAG PBL, but they're kind of implying that she's going to be one of the first women. And in the show, it was specifically just for ticket sales. So that was kind of, I don't know. I guess, do you have any thoughts on that? Or I just keep rambling?
No, of course. It's kind of like, it was a similar mindset just 10 years later of the All American Girls Professional Baseball League, where, okay, all these men are off to war. We don't have our superstar, or a good chunk of our superstars playing in Major League Baseball. How do we keep the sport of baseball alive? Let's bring in the woman. And now we see a very similar storyline about a decade later in the Negro Leagues, where, the league is folding a little bit. We're down to 4 teams. What can we do to revitalize it to any extent? And then, it's kind of like a back burner thought, but it's like, oh, okay, let's finally now bring in women who have worked like Tony Stone her whole entire life, 16 years, 16 to 32, of playing organized professional all woman baseball at the time, finally earning her crack at professional baseball. But it's kind of interesting to see that she was able to earn her crack to this stardom at such a late time, and like a little bit of like a last resort option to kind of save the league.
Yeah. And I really wish I could have found her stats. But in
It's
1953,
hard, yeah. They
with
weren't
only
keeping them
4
very
teams in
well.
the league, they didn't do a very
Mhm.
good job of record keeping.
Yes.
Tony Stone did end up getting to play the next season as well. So it wasn't a
Mhm.
completely one and done. Her contract was sold to the Kansas City Monarchs, who are
Yes.
probably the most storied team in Negro League history.
Mhm.
So that was really cool. But then, kind of after her, Sid Pollock was not done with it. He saw kind of how that had revitalized his team, and he actually went out and signed 2 women to play the next year, Mamie Peanut Johnson and Connie
Mhm.
Morgan, both 19 at the time.
Yes.
So, and they were the first 2 to ever sign to a long-term contract in professional
Yeah.
baseball history, and in what is considered a quote-unquote major league.
Mhm.
So,
And then, like you were speaking with the Max character in the TV show A League of Their Own, she's also like a conglomeration of Peanut, who did try out for the All American Girls Professional Baseball League, or at least wanted to try out and was turned down solely because of her race, not because of her talent level.
yes. Yeah, and she actually, so because the records were not very good,
Mhm.
she self-reported as having a 33-8 record, and no
I
one
believe it.
came out and said no, that's wrong. So,
Mhm.
yeah, she was a really really good pitcher that did not get a shot. She actually tried out for the AAG PBL in 1953, which was the
Yeah.
second to last year of that league. So
Mhm.
there's definitely a little bit of a time crunch in the show just because
Of course.
of the kind of the format that they have to tell these
Mhm.
stories. But she did sign as a 2-way player for a
Mhm.
barnstorming tour, kind of follows Max's character.
Yes.
And on top of her 33-8 records, she had a 273 average as a hitter.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
she was really good.
Right. She was
So
Shohei Otani before Shohei Otani.
exactly. And then her teammate Connie Morgan
Mhm.
signed in the exact same year to play second base. I could not find any of her stats,
Yes, it
but
was very difficult.
I believe she also tried to try out for the AAG PBL. I
I would
believe
not be surprised. Yeah.
so. But yeah, so that was kind of the main the main bulk of women in baseball in the 40s and 50s, and really up until the 80s. Kind of after that, when the Negro Leagues completely folded, everything kind of just stagnated. And I
Folding
mean,
of the AAGPBL.
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah. The folding of the AAG PBL, the folding of
Yes.
the Negro Leagues, it just stagnated.
Mhm.
And the MLB was still a boys' club,
Mhm.
and through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and then we get to 1989,
Yes.
and we kind of start seeing the first of maybe a new age of women in baseball with
Mhm.
Julie Crouteau, who
Yes.
she walked on to St. Mary's College of Maryland in 1989 as a freshman and made the baseball team.
Mhm.
So she ended up going on to become the first woman to play in NCAA in actual organized games. And then she went to, or she went on to play for a couple of independent teams that would play exhibitions against all men's teams, and did that for a couple years. And then she ended up becoming a coach after that. So she's kind of been through a lot of firsts as one of the first women college coaches, the first woman player. And so she was kind of the first of a new generation of women in baseball.
Mhm.
So, and then it really didn't stop there. The next year, we had Jody Haller, who came in as the first woman to pitch in a college game for St. Vincent College in 1991. Then Isla Borders came in, I believe, also in 91 to be the first woman to start a game in both NCAA and NAIA history. And so that was all in the course of 3 years there. We're starting to see a ton of firsts. And we've kind of seen a steady stream, a very small, but like a steady drip of women in NCAA baseball since. I think as recently as last year, there were 6 women across the NCAA. So,
Very cool to see how this like late 80s, early 90s, if you will, trailblazing era of women lead then more into now like the modern day of women in baseball. Like one of my favorite stories and one of my favorite people of all time, like my biggest role model, is Justine Siegel and her story. She's just absolutely incredible. She was born, I believe, in 75, and she played baseball her whole life until she became an age, I believe, maybe 10, 12 ish, where the coach finally told her, like, hey, girls don't play baseball, they play softball. And then she had a talk with her dad, and her dad was like, no, girls can play baseball. So, although she was no longer to play on that team that she was currently playing on or had hopes to play on, she continued following and growing through the footsteps of her love for baseball, which is really, really cool because before you know it, it's 2011 with Cleveland, and she is the first woman throwing out batting practice. And then a few years later in Oakland with the Oakland A's in 2015, she's the first woman to coach on the field for the Athletics, which is really cool. She was also a coach for Team Israel in the winter in the World Baseball Classic. So that was really cool to kind of see her in these different coaching roles, throwing out batting practice, and she actually threw out batting practice to 4 additional teams besides Cleveland and Oakland. Your St. Louis Cardinals being one of the teams that Justine was able to throw batting practice out for, which is really, really cool.
woo.
Speaking of the TV show A League of Their Own, she was the baseball coordinator for it. So for months before all of the actors were, on set and filming, they went through months of learning baseball. Most of them had at least a softball knowledge. Some of them had a baseball knowledge, but she literally, put them through practices, which is really cool. So when we see them in or in the TV series, excuse me, they're all coming from a baseball background that Justine kind of facilitated and taught through those few months of practice, if you will, for this team rather than this like caster crew of actors, which is really, really cool. She also founded the organization called Baseball for All, which works for equity in baseball, getting girls and women playing baseball. She's done a whole lot of creating NCAA programs and creating just collegiate programs in general across different 4-year universities and community colleges. So her work is just absolutely incredible. I swear she does not sleep. I've had the honor to have had several conversations with her, which is really, really awesome. But the thing is, too, that I don't know if a lot of people know about her is she actually has her PhD, which she earned before she even became affiliated with throwing out batting practice for Cleveland and then later becoming a coach for Oakland. Whereas we see so often with most of the coaches in Major League Baseball, all of them are guys, and most of them are coaches either because they were a coach or because they were a player. I don't know if I can tell you if any coach on the field right now in Major League Baseball has a PhD, but Justine did, and it has been a very, very long road for her. But everything she has done has paid off, is currently paying off, and her story is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. We're gonna talk more about that offline because
Of
I would
course.
definitely love to talk more about that. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, and that actually reminds me, going back to Julie Crouteau for just a quick
Yeah,
minute.
of
So
course. Mhm.
As Justine Siegel was the coordinator for A League of Their Own, Julie Crouteau actually continued her baseball career by being one of the baseball uh, not stunt doubles, but the baseball doubles for
Yes.
some of the girls in the movie.
Mhm.
So it's really cool to see, even after they're done kind of playing, in Julie's case, continuing to try and keep that story and that encouragement of other girls to play baseball going by participating in these movies, these shows that are telling the stories of all the way back in the 40s. It's really really cool to see. So
It's incredible how many like Easter eggs, if you will, are hidden in the TV show League of Their Own. In the very first episode, like during tryouts, or either during tryouts or during the first game, but it's in the first episode. There are two women that the camera pans to on the seats, and those women are one of the last two women who are living who played in the All American Girls Professional Baseball League, which is really cool. There's some past actors who make appearances throughout the show. There's some actual real life ball players who were there at the tryouts as like extras, if you will. So it's really cool how instead just the culture of lifting one another up, and just continually providing and creating roles for women in baseball that they have long deserved and have earned, and now they're finally getting their spotlight, and they're pretty damn good at it.
yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Um, yeah, so I guess in the interest of time, because I know we could talk
Yeah.
about this for hours and hours and
Oh, of
hours.
course.
But kind of Justine Siegel is just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to kind
Yes.
of what we're seeing with women in
Hmm.
professional baseball now. Like Alyssa Nakken
Hmm.
became the first full time women coach for the Giants back in 2020. I believe she's still
Yes.
an on field coach for the Giants today.
Correct. Yes.
And that was huge when that happened, because it's kind of,
Absolutely.
uh, I assume that it's kind of like every other situation where, like, until you see that it's happened, it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like something that is possible. And
Yes.
so yeah, she wasn't a manager, but see, her becoming part of a major league club kind
Hmm.
of starts opening up opportunities at all levels. um
Absolutely. And later in that 2020 season, she became or filled in for the first base coach. And the first game that she was the first base coach, her whole uniform was shipped over to Cooperstown to commemorate that moment.
that's awesome.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then,
Alyssa, yeah.
oh no, go ahead, I was gonna talk about Veronica Alvarez.
No, of course, yeah. If you want to talk about Veronica, I have a few women after her.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, like, Alyssa was the first full time coach, but then we start seeing like Veronica Alvarez, who became a spring training
Hmm.
coach for the A's back in, actually in 2019. So even
Yeah.
before Alyssa got her on field debut,
Hmm.
and so we're starting to see like a consistent growth among actual major league coaches. And
Yeah, and then, in addition to the coaching side of things, we're now seeing more women in like the leadership positions of Major League Ball clubs, like Kim Ning, who became the first woman general manager. She with the Miami Marlins in 2021, and she has a very long storied career. She actually started out once she graduated college with her bachelor's degree. She started out as an intern with the Chicago White Sox, and then just kept on working up the ladder until finally becoming the first woman GM with the Marlins. And I know many Marlins fans know her for an incredible deal she made with their ace of the staff, Sandy Alcantara, excuse me. I believe it's like a 5-year, $56 million deal. And right now, that's looking very, very good. As Sandy, one could argue this point, but right now he is the unanimous favorite for winning the National League Cy Young Award for 2022.
yeah, 100%. So she came
Yes.
into that role in 2021, has not been there a very long time, but took
Hmm.
over a club that has just been kind of flailing for anything for
Yes.
a long time.
Yes.
And yeah, they're not maybe the best team in the league right now, but seeing some
Hmm.
of the moves she's making, going out to get Jorge Soler, to go out and
Yes.
get Jesus Aguilar,
Yes.
some of these big free agent signings that she's made. Some of them have panned out better than others, but
Okay.
she's made a couple of really great trades. She signed Sandy Alcantara. She's setting up this team to be good for a long while. And I love that Derek Jeter gave her this opportunity. He didn't give her the opportunity. She earned the opportunity.
Hmm.
He's the one
Yeah.
that ultimately hired her,
Yeah.
and gave her first crack at it. But she's
Hmm.
going to be a GM for a very long time.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, like you were mentioning with a couple of trades that were happening throughout the offseason, like she's not only having immediate impact, she's having immediate positive impact that is only going to progress and hopefully lead to a lot of good things for the Miami Marlins. Especially when you look at their pitching staff and then you're looking at their bats coming along. Like she also signed Avisail Garcia. You have Jazz Chisholm. Unfortunately, he's been injured right now. But that team is beginning to round out very, very nicely, and it's a lot of it is due to a lot of immediate moves that she's not afraid to make and has made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then, that also leads to the story of someone like Rachel Balkovec, who has become the first full-time woman manager in a major league affiliated organizations. We know her as the manager of the Tampa Tarpons, which is a single A club for the New York Yankees in their minor league organization. And it's really, really cool to see her impact in all of her uniforms that have already been sent and shipped over to Cooperstown. She is absolutely incredible. Her story is really, really amazing. She's worked with a few ball clubs that were on like different weekly stints, especially for like strength and conditioning. And then she even like went away out of the country for a little bit to kind of re-find herself in the baseball world. She not only has higher level education, she also has 2 master's degrees on top of her bachelor degree, which is absolutely incredible. Like these women have worked so incredibly hard, and I would argue all of the women who are in these positions, whether it's like a Kim Ning in the leadership management of the ball club, or directly on the field like Alyssa Nakin, like Rachel Balkovec, is they've had to go on the extra mile to also accumulate all of the schooling to go into it, because so many players or managers and coaches that we see have that playing career. So they not only have played baseball, have played softball growing up, they're also adding additional education that not many coaches and managers can say that they have, which really puts them in a very awesome situation of having all of this different perspective that can only aid them in their jobs of being managers, being coaches, and being a general manager.
Yeah. And that actually kind of goes right into a point that I was going to make is all of these
Mhm.
women that you're mentioning here
Yeah.
all have master's degrees.
Yes.
Justine has a PhD.
Correct.
These women have been having to go out and get all this higher education to basically
Yes.
prove to somebody that
Hmm.
they're going to be able to take this opportunity and run with it and succeed.
Hmm.
That's not even remotely the same case with men in baseball. I
No,
mean,
not at
I
all.
think the perfect example is Billy Bean. So Billy Bean
Yeah.
back in the 80s was drafted out of high school. He was a phenom pitcher at the time.
Mhm.
And he ended up not panning out from a baseball perspective. I don't think he went back to college. He ended up getting moved into the front office, worked his way up to GM, and he's had a phenomenal career. And I'm not trying to knock Billy Bean at all, but just looking at his story versus the story of like Justine Siegel or Kimming
Hmm.
or Rachel Balkovec, like there's a really big disparity there. Drafted out of high school and then was just given an opportunity after he couldn't play anymore and then ran with it, as opposed to having to go for more schooling to prove to somebody that if they
Mm.
got an opportunity that they could run with it. Like Billy Bean didn't have to prove anything.
Mm-mm.
He earned it, but he didn't have to prove it. And that's
Exactly.
kind of where you're seeing the disparity.
Hmm. It's just all of these extra added on obstacles that women in baseball have to go through just to get a chance to be a part of the game that they have grown to love so much, like we do.
Yeah. And everyone that we've talked about here has been on
Hmm.
the management side, the
Yeah.
be it an on-field manager or coach,
Hmm.
but still, we've not even talked about a player yet.
Yes.
Like, and now we get to like the first woman to ever play in an MLB affiliated league. and
Yes.
that is Kelsey Whitmore. So she's not the first woman to play professional baseball,
Hmm.
but in an MLB affiliated league, she's been playing in the Atlantic League since 2019.
Yes.
So I
2019 or 2020? 2019. Yeah.
think I closed her baseball reference page. Let me get it pulled back up. But yeah, so she's kind of the first woman to get a shot at playing in a league that there's room to continue to grow and move on. And she's been playing, let's see, so she played in
She
the
was in the
Pacific
Pacific
Association in 16 and
Association.
17. And then
Yeah.
2022 is actually the first time she's played in the Atlantic League.
Correct. Yes.
So, um, but she's, wow, the stats page for the Atlantic League is not good.
No, it's a
Uh,
little rough.
so she's pitched 5 1/3 innings this year, and then
Hmm.
she's played about 51 innings in the field. So she's
Yes.
not got a lot of playing time this year.
No.
But in the time that she has played, she's been trying to make the most of it. She's pitched, she's
Hmm.
hit, and that's been really really cool to see. I wish she would get more playing time
Hmm.
because she's not really getting the opportunity to prove her skills on the field. But her being the first woman to actually play in a league like this, that's
Hmm.
got to open a ton of doors, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely exciting, and I guess I know you prefaced this before, but if you haven't seen A League of Their Own, a TV series, will be a slight spoiler. Um, so come back in like 2 minutes. But through the series, we see that Max is trying to get a tryout for her local league called the Screws. Everyone has a job in the factory. She gets a job in the factory to hopefully get a tryout and pitch. She eventually gets a tryout, and unfortunately, it doesn't go very well. And then she does not get another opportunity with the Screws until later in the series. She meets somebody who is a woman on the Negro League. She recruits her, and now Max finally has a chance to live out her dream, and she does well with the second opportunity. I kind of see that similarly, if I can, with Kelsey Whitmore's case, which is a matter of because you're a trailblazer, because you're doing something for the first time, you have all this pressure, all the eyes are on you to succeed. That you're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious. People are going to look at your very first at bat. They're going to look at the very first pitch you throw, and they're immediately going to judge you in different ways that they do and do not judge men in the similar situations. So it's very fun to see Kelsey get this opportunity. Of course, you want her to get more, and she has the capability to do more. From a personal standpoint, without getting too emotional about it, um, this is what's really cool to me. I tried out for the boys travel team in my local area the summer going into eighth grade. So I was 13 years old. And it was a very interesting time. It was a 2-day tryout, possibly up to 3 days if you got a call back. And it was hard. Of course, I was the only woman, only girl, I should say, who was trying out. The second I got there, nobody liked me. Nobody wanted to be by me. The coaches had to literally force the kid to be my throwing partner leading into the tryouts. I was stuck being last or close to last during all of the different drills. And then you can just notice and feel like an atmospheric change when I was up getting the grounders from short, tossing to first, when I was in the outfield, catching the flyouts, and then getting relay throws into the infield. All of that extra pressure and eyes, like you want to do well, and I wanted to do well, and I know I can do well, but inevitably, did not have the tryout that I thought I could have had, especially due to the situation that most of the tryouts simply was not fair. And it was tough. I had my own little corner of the dugout. Somebody even put their baseball bag over my baseball bag, almost basically like symbolically showing like it doesn't matter that I'm there. They're still gonna get that spotlight that I would not be able to earn or deserve in that situation. So it's nice to see that these women were able to stick to it and get to the Atlantic League. Whereas for me, because I finally, had the courage to go to to go to this 2-day tryout. Because I was 13, almost 14, you're getting into high school season very, very soon. That there wasn't really an opportunity had I made the team. who knows what could have happened in terms of the high school baseball team. But it's nice to see that more women are playing. That's why I love what Justine Siegel is doing for Baseball for All. You see all of these girls, you see all of these young women continue to play, and not just continue to play, but they're starting to play at such a young age. Whereas for me, I was the only person who would do it. My friends were convincing me just to do the softball team, but it's like, no, I don't want to play softball. Like Justine told her dad, I want to play baseball, and that's kind of led into so much that like I've personally have done. That's one of the reasons why I've been looking forward to this podcast so much because of all of these different women and all that they have done to lead the way for the next person who does want to play baseball, regardless of their gender identity, knowing that they're going to have an opportunity and hopefully eventually diminish all those extra obstacles that women are still dealing with in baseball.
I literally cannot follow that up. That Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
No, of
That
course.
we're gonna talk more about that off camera too,
Okay.
because I have lots of questions. But yeah, that
Yes.
I guess what I'll say is I can't even imagine any of this. Like
Hmm.
for very obvious reasons. I mean, look at me. I've kind of, if I wanted it, I probably had the opportunity. I
Hmm.
didn't want it. So being able to see and hear stories of people who didn't get the opportunity but wanted it and made themselves get it
Hmm.
is phenomenal. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I really don't know how to follow up that. I'm gonna clip that and I'm gonna share that places. Uh,
No, it's okay. It's a story that I don't share very often. There's so many more details that we can absolutely discuss, on camera, off camera, what have you. But like how I kind of deal with that situation is, a few days, a few weeks after that, some of the boys who were in that tryout had reached out to me saying things like, Ashley, you're so brave to do that. I'm glad you were there. Of course, you would have liked that support during that moment, but the fact that a few of them took the time to reflect on the situation and understand everything about it was really, really nice. But then I kind of see that although I wasn't able to play baseball on an organized baseball team, I then eventually found MLB The Show and content creation. And now, I have a job where I'm going to have a first-hand touch on baseball on MLB The Show. So it's kind of like my second tryout, if you will. Although I'm not directly playing baseball, I'm able to kind of have a touch on baseball, on Major League Baseball, and hopefully impact it in a positive way.
and you 100% will. I have full faith in you there. So I guess I have kind of one final, very nebulous question for you then.
Yes.
Where do we go from here? What's next? What would you like to see? I mean, obviously, a fully equitable sport is
Mhm.
the goal, but I guess what's next?
No, it's a very good question, and it just comes down to support and being able to be a good person who wants to see this change that people have not only deserved but have earned throughout their time. It's uplifting women who want to play this game that we love. It's uplifting the voices that might not have the microphone that some of us do, and passing over the microphone and encouraging those stories, providing those stories to a larger audience. It's sometimes just sitting back and listening, whether it's listening through, I guess, listening and reading, if you will, reading about these stories, acknowledging these stories, understanding the significance of these stories, hearing about the struggles, and not only just hearing about the struggles, but, validating the struggles, whether we're able to necessarily fully relate to them or not. It's spreading the word on the movie A League of Their Own, on the TV series A League of Their Own, and pushing that. I cannot talk about the TV series enough of A League of Their Own and how they encapsulate so many additional storylines that the movie couldn't, just because the movie came out in the 1990s. There are still taboo topics that
Well,
we're
and
finally able to
it was a
fully
Disney
discuss.
movie in the 90s.
Correct.
So there was
Yeah.
even more stuff that they couldn't talk about.
Yes.
It touches
Absolutely.
on race. It touches on sexual identity. It
Hmm.
touches on obviously on gender. Um,
Yes.
it's a phenomenal show.
Yes.
Go watch it.
Yes,
But
absolutely. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just being able to listen, uplift, then provide the opportunities where you can, provide the support where you can. Any help is help. Any retweet is a retweet. Any playing catch with their neighbors, playing catch with their neighbors, so on and so forth. Everything matters. It's just the willingness to allow it to matter becomes very important.
Yeah. And I know that our show doesn't have a very large footprint, but I would like to kind of challenge
Mhm.
anyone in any of the boys in the situation of your tryout. If you're going to reach out afterwards and say you're so brave, don't wait. Say it in
Mhm.
the moment.
Yeah.
Embrace someone that doesn't look like you being there. I mean, I'm from a really small area. We're a bit stuck in the past. So we have a few more issues than just like accepting women in certain areas
Mhm.
still. But anyone that doesn't look like you, and especially people who don't get the opportunities that they deserve because of their gender, their sexual identity, their race, welcome them with open arms. Tell them they're brave in the moment. Support them.
Mhm.
Be their catch partner. Don't wait until weeks later. Because I know that, especially as a kid, you want to be accepted by the majority. So does the person that you're ostracizing. So just think about that next time, and and try and be better. Try and incorporate everyone else so that they get that same opportunity. So that people like Ashley don't feel that immense pressure. Like there's a reason I didn't mention Kelsey Whitmore's stats
Mhm.
because she's under such immense pressure that I know she could play better than that. She's not got the opportunity. Like we need to encourage everybody, especially those that don't get the opportunities that people like me do. So I guess that's my challenge is go play catch with the people at the tryout who are trying to break norms.
It's a very good challenge.
I think that's all I've got. Do you have any closing thoughts for today?
I don't believe so. Other than what we've been talking about is hopefully this episode just is the start of it all, where we encourage the listeners and the viewers to do research on their own, to get involved in whatever capacity they're able to get involved in on their own. Like hopefully this is the start of, like, many episodes that we may have together, and just to continue the conversation is so very important so that it doesn't die out, and we have the period of the 60s, 70s, and 80s where there's not a whole lot going on. Hopefully this is just the start of something very, very big.
Absolutely. And you have an open invitation. You always have, you always will. Just text
Let's
me,
go.
and we'll even do a second podcast that week if you can't do Wednesdays, or we have so much to talk about. So you're
I got
more
you.
than welcome. I'll even kick Gotham out for an episode like I did this week. He wasn't going
Sure,
to India
awesome.
until I told him, nope, you're out. Bye.
Yep.
So
See you later.
I think that's how it worked. Maybe he
Hmm.
texted me and said, hey, I'm going to see family or something. I don't know.
Maybe,
Um, tomato, potato. But yeah, so thank you very much for joining me today, Ashley. I
Thank
really
you for
appreciate
having me.
it.
Yeah.
Congratulations again on your new role at Sony San Diego.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
luck. I know you're going to kill it.
Thank
All
you.
the people out there, from what I can tell, are phenomenal. So I really hope that they welcome you in day one and take you out to lunch and pay for your lunch and everything. So,
Thank you. Few
uh,
days, only a few days left in Chicago.
it's going to be exciting. I'll have to come out and
It
visit you.
is.
So,
Yes.
yes.
Bet.
All right. So thank you everyone else for hanging out with us tonight and listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube by searching at Getaway Day Pod, or I guess on podcast apps, Getaway Day colon the dot
Yeah.
that one
Yep.
colon
Cool.
MLB podcast. And I'm actually going to ask, share this episode, please, because I really think more people need to hear Ashley's stories here and her thoughts on women in baseball, because this is one that, like I said, people don't think about. So please share this episode specifically with everyone, because I think this is a really important topic. See, I guess what is the part that I usually say that I forgot? On YouTube, click that little notification bell so that you don't miss a future episode. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok at Getaway Day Pod. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or a YouTube comment there. So please help us out. Help get this episode pretty big here for Ashley and every girl who's ever tried to play baseball and has been told, no, you can't, or even the ones that have found their way. I think this is really important stories to tell. I appreciate you all hanging out with us, and we will be back here next week with another guest host. So stay tuned, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.